Hello, and thank you all for joining our last Thursday's webinar today. I'm Deborah McGrath, Senior Manager, Technical Product Solutions Marketing at ServiceNow, and I'll be hosting today's webinar on transforming Agile at scale. And joining me today, also from ServiceNow, are Fred Champlain, who's an Agile evangelist and one of our thought leaders on everything Agile and safe, and Greg Sand, Advisory Solution Consultant, who has deep knowledge and expertise across our entire strategic portfolio management suite. So we're confident that most of what we'll be discussing and showing are features that are available as of our current Tokyo release. But just in case Fred and Greg may point out some upcoming features, we've included our safe harbor notice that this presentation may contain forward-looking statements that reflect the current beliefs of ServiceNow, all based on current information available. Actual results may differ materially and should not be relied upon in making purchasing decisions. And as always, we'll save a few minutes at the end for a Q&A session. Welcome, Greg and Fred. Thanks so much for being here today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Deborah. Why don't we talk a little bit about why do we need scaling in Agile? Why is this a current topic, a hot topic in Agile? And we want to talk a little bit today about some of the pain points, some of the drivers, some of the issues that organizations have when they are taking Agile from a small handful of teams and they need to add additional teams. We'll talk about some of the pain points. And then we'll also provide you with a look at how do we do this within ServiceNow. So first, let's talk about the pain points. Once you're past 3 or 4 or 5 teams, in trying to coordinate those teams together organically, that can work for a lot of organizations. But frequently there comes a point where there's additional challenges, additional pain points that just emerge. And some of the indicators of this, and we'll look at several of these indicators, are when you have multiple handoffs between teams. And frequently there may be long lead times between those teams. A team can't just pick up work and do it immediately. They've already planned out their work. There may be other dependencies that other teams have on them. So this quickly becomes a challenging network, if you will, of requests between teams, dependencies, and then consequently delays. And frequently, these teams might drift from having shared priorities over time. And overall, there's a sense of that we're missing some dependencies. There's just not a focus maybe on the architecture, or maybe architects aren't really in the loop to be planning out a runway, a roadmap of just the enabling type of pieces of functionality that are required for a product or for a solution. So additional pain points, they come in all different shapes and sizes. Visibility across teams of all the work together is a frequent pain point. If you're not using the same tooling, you're not using the same cadence. We'll talk about that later. In the larger picture, products might be late to market, meaning you're missing deadlines if they're internal, if there's milestones that are planned and those are missed. The organization might be misaligned overall, and it may be that the Agile teams are just running into organizational roadblocks, policies, procedures, lines of reporting may be getting in the way as well. There's technical reasons that become pain points as well. Technical drivers such as not being able to do builds frequently enough, maybe daily, maybe hourly, depends on your organization, what the expectations are. But at some point, if you've got teams running independently or loosely affiliated, and the architecture might not support clean builds, you may have issues with code management. There might not be alignment on check-in and when builds are happening and when testing is running. You may run into administrative issues such as multiple charge codes for resources. There might be a lot of back billing through the organization just to keep teams going. And at some point, that takes a whole effort itself to unravel. So you get 50, 60 people, 75 people. There's a breaking point for most organizations where these pain points just overcome the benefits of trying to orchestrate Agile in an organic fashion. And there's several frameworks and approaches that have been tried and have emerged over the years where there's different ways to align. and look at, well, how do we plan together, for example? Well, one of the predominant frameworks, or the dominant framework right now in the marketplace, is a framework called Scaled Agile framework, frequently referred to as SAFe. We know from, for example, from the State of Agile 2021 report that SAFe continues to be the dominating framework that people turn to solve these pain points of scaling, of taking your organization from a handful of teams into tens or hundreds of teams for many organizations that are successfully using SAFe. Now we're focused on SAFe today. There are other frameworks out there that are perfectly valid. Several come to mind. We won't go through all of those today. We're going to focus on SAFe for this discussion today. But ServiceNow does have the ability to support LESS and DAD and any framework out there. Essentially, it uses a backlog and a Kanban to be managed. So thinking about SAFe in particular, this is a view of SAFe that really is based on competencies, and SAFe has a focus on driving and providing business agility overall to an organization. And there's several areas of competency, all focused on a customer. So in an agile, true agile focus is always being customer centric on what we're doing. You can see here there's several different competencies, ranging from lean portfolio management, which we can talk about another day from a ServiceNow perspective. Today we're going to look at the team and technical agility competency, because that's the foundation of scaling. And that's where many of our customers start, is taking those organic teams and just giving them some structure. And frequently that structure is in the form of, as you can see here in the larger graphic, is what SAFe calls an agile release train, or a team of teams. You may be familiar, you may have seen in the upper left here, a kind of a busy picture of SAFe. And is overwhelming for people who are not familiar with the need for all of this structure in the framework. And you can very easily get lost in this. So we're just looking at the bottom portion of this framework, this picture here today, and really focusing on this art, which you can see in the middle of the larger graphic here. And this is where we think about things about this team of teams. And we'll talk about that next a little bit and talk about what does that team of teams look like. But within SAFe, there's several aspects of SAFe practices, such as planning together on the same calendar. For example, starting and finishing sprints or iterations on the same, literally on the same days, giving demos on the same days, getting together to do what SAFe calls PI planning, which is roughly akin to quarterly planning in an organization, having a vision that pulls together the team. So there's a vision and there's a roadmap that the team is aware of what's over the horizon. And all of these things allow us to align teams. There's a shared purpose, a shared vision, shared planning together, where in that planning, we're working out those dependencies and anticipating those and coordinating and making the trade-offs that are necessary. We're also thinking about architectural runway. What do we need from the architect's perspective that will enable us downstream to continue to build out new functionality? We may need a new upgrade for our ERP. We may need a new set of services from a cloud provider. We may need several things that have some lead time to them and may need some development of themselves. We also are thinking about, well, how do we build and how do we have a cohesive build process? So we think about DevOps being underlying this to really drive what SAFe calls a continuous delivery pipeline. So by sharing all of this together as a team, planning together, thinking around a customer and having the same customer in mind personas, design thinking comes into play, and customer journeys. Sharing all this and working on this together is really one of the keys to success, not only within SAFe, but in most methods that are looking at scaling. There's always a sense of how do we get aligned on the calendar? How do we work together? How do we plan together? How do we synchronize together? So this is the beginning of scaling. It's the foundation of SAFe. There's many more elements of SAFe we won't go into today. And as I mentioned earlier, SAFe goes all the way up to the portfolio level or layer, where you can manage the funding for all of this work across many, many teams of teams. SAFe, in fact, has a concept of a team of teams of teams for complex, large products that may allow you to scale to thousands of individuals, hundreds of teams. And this is occurring in real life for customers around the world. They're adopting SAFe as they've matured their adoption of Agile. They've run into these pain points. And they see that there's value in a framework such as SAFe. So let's take a look at how do we align with Agile release trains, and what do we mean by an Agile release train? And then we'll transition, and Greg will show us how this works in ServiceNow. So when we talk about a release train, it'll be referred to as an ART. It's a term specific to SAFe, but it's really, as I said, it's a team of team structure. So what we're after is having cross-functional teams. And these teams can be, some of them can be aligned to particular functionality that the team is working on. If you're working on a product or service as a product, there may be particular features that come, are in the backlog, and the team's working on a set of features. There may be some, if you have a platform, there may be a team, as you can see in the lower right here, there may be a team that is thinking more about platform services. There may be a team that's thinking about a particular backend, like this complicated subsystem. There may be a team that's more about enabling. There may be an integration team on this ART. The idea is to have teams that are cross-functional, and also to have the ART be self-sufficient as much as you can. So this is why you want this ART, which is typically maybe anywhere from 8, 10, 12 teams. You pull them together. You want them to be self-sufficient with the work that they're taking on. So if you need some support from architecture, you need support from security, you need UX designers, all of this is wrapped into an ART. And it's a really nice way to if you will, package a team of teams that's ready to take on the world, if you will. And you can see here an example in the lower left, just a picture of what we mean by planning together. And it literally, from a SAFe perspective, the recommended practice is to literally pull everybody, including developers, including testers, including anybody and everybody involved, into the same room, because we want to gain a shared understanding. We want developers to hear directly from the business owners, what are the business objectives, and also to hear what the technical objectives are as well. And all of this is covered in PI planning, which again occurs roughly on a quarterly basis. That varies across organizations on exactly how they want to define their program increments. And you can see in the upper right here, what happens during one of the PI planning events is we have what's called a program board, where teams have rows, and each of the blue and the red items here are planning items. Some are risk. You can see some red connections here that are depicting dependencies between teams that need to be planned for. So you can see how this pulls together. SAFe really allows enables us, I should say, to pull together teams, have some structure that's coordinated, is in sync with each other, and then we're actually thinking proactively about what are our dependencies, how do we handle them, and so we surface all of this. And one of the keys is to have this be transparent across all teams. Be transparent on the performance, how are we doing, be transparent on the risk. So why don't we take a look at how we do this within ServiceNow, and we'll have Greg show us a quick demo.
Thank you, Fred. And I just want to talk a bit, just for a moment before we begin our demonstration. We had an opportunity to actually talk with a number of our clients at the Scaled Agile Framework Summit earlier in Denver in May. And they absolutely justified some of those pain points, seeing organizational change that's taking place, realizing that there is a large number of teams that they have to address and they absolutely have to scale. In another client use case, they have 7,000 500 team members that are operating in that safe practice. And we're absolutely seeing how they have that need to scale, especially at the large number of products and features and capabilities that they're providing for their customers. So with that, let's talk about how safe in application in ServiceNow allows us to help carry that journey forward and really allow them to scale. And we're going to start with our safe application here from that team level. We have a chance to see that we can toggle between those different teams that we need to plan for. We can see the different PIs that we can toggle from one PI to another to help with our planning, creating stories straight from this particular view to add more to our overall sprints, and to also think about our overall backlog that we have here. We can see we can filter these by maybe a particular feature that we have. We can mark sprints complete, and we can see how we have story points and group capacity that we have assigned to the sprints. We can see how much we are performing against those sprints and stories that are being completed. And at the bottom, we have an opportunity to see our backlog. And what we can see in our backlog down here is it can also include other elements from the ServiceNow platform as part of maybe the DevOps pipeline, as you brought up, which is thinking about those service management components that we may need. Maybe we have problems or incidences or defects that we need to bring into our backlog, and allows us to also seamlessly create a story from those incidences to help us streamline and automate some of those operations that may come from development work as well as from that operational work. We can also think about this from a Kanban capability using our visual task board capability here, where we can easily drag and drop and move stories back and forth and easily create assignments into these stories as well. So the other vision that we have is when we got that team planning that's taking place. And as you mentioned, Fred, we really need to take that to that train level. We're going to move on into that Agile release train that we see here. And now we're getting a chance to visualize through our product capabilities of how we can see those different teams that are working on this particular PI. And you're getting a chance to see that PI here. And we can toggle those PIs back and forth. We can easily create, we can edit that program increment here or mark some of these complete like we did before, or maybe we could select a specific feature to help filter some of the views and lenses we have here in our planning board. We're also getting a chance to talk about those dependencies as you brought up earlier, and we're getting a chance to see some of those lines on these stories and those dependencies. We see that we have some that we need to help resolve, so we can easily click and drag and help resolve some of those dependencies. Very interactive and being able to drag from the backlog into the different sprints to very easily begin to work on those items. We can also change this lens to our features and be able to see what do those features look like? What do those dependencies look like from a feature standpoint? And we can even highlight even some of those features to see how they're taking place. What's the timeline? What are the backend stories that are helping with that? And we can also look at this from a backlog capability from features as well, as we were able to do with our stories, as well as leverage our visual task board capability here in a Kanban style fashion to also drag and drop and think about how we could easily interface with moving our features as well. Now that we have our train, we've got our team of teams working together, we can then also think about this from the portfolio perspective. What is that big rock planning that we need to do? What does that look like from a portfolio perspective? How are we applying lean portfolio management? How are we getting this on our roadmap? And this is where we can easily come in and we can create those high-level epics to help bring into our backlog of epics and think about what does that planning look like from a portfolio perspective. And to help visualize this in a roadmap style fashion, we can leverage our alignment planner workspace capability here that brings that portfolio to bear and look at those major epics that we have and see how they might be aligned to, say, our primary goals and our priorities in the organization. We can personalize these roadmaps to be able to surface different data points that we could change on the fly. So we get a great lens and look at those epics that we need to do as part of our planning. And we can see even some of the interdependencies that we have here, even at that major epic level, to help us understand what's the order of, that we need to execute on these? What does this look like from a planning standpoint? And how are these aligning within our organization? To help us with that, we can also think about prioritization of our portfolio. And that's where we can come in here and think about the prioritization that some of these items may have. We may want to surface some approval dates or who owns these particular initiatives, and maybe even some prioritization that we need to have. And more importantly, especially with our latest Tokyo release, is allowing us to be able to rank and stack and be able to move things up and down from a ranking standpoint that we may need to do. But how is this aligning with the organization? How are we sure that we are achieving those objectives? And that's where the goal framework really comes into play in thinking about that OKR model that you have in your organization. We see here that we've got some major goals and targets that we've established, and we can align our work to that so we can begin to get those things like actual value against those base targets that we've described. This makes sure that the work we're delivering is providing value to organization and thinking about that value and those metrics and what does value mean to you and how we can collect that together on the ServiceNow platform. So as we begin to think about grooming and we think about how we're delivering on those portfolios effectively, we also want to make sure that we pay attention to our performance. And that's where I'm just going to surface a couple dashboards that we offer out of the box that can absolutely help you with those epics, those sprints, those features. You can see we can think about a PI dashboard or a prior PI dashboard, paying attention to some of those trending capabilities that we may have as we perform our work. So this concludes our demonstration of our scaled Agile framework capabilities. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deborah. Deborah?
Thanks, Greg and Fred, for that thought-provoking discussion and the great demo showing us how you can leverage ServiceNow's Agile and safe applications. Really shows how we can deal with some of those common pain points, scale Agile, drive business agility, and most importantly, I think it was a great discussion on transforming with Agile so you can deliver on business outcomes. And now I'd like to invite our audience to join us for a couple of additional great upcoming events. Please join us on Tuesday, November 1st, for our next SPM Summit for the Americas, where you'll hear from Yoav Boaz, the General Manager of our SPM business unit, and Karina Hatfield, Director of Product Management, who will discuss our product roadmap. And a special treat, we also have several ServiceNow customers who will be sharing their experiences with managing change to deliver on business outcomes. And of course, on the last Thursday of every month, we present a webinar on strategic portfolio management capabilities or enhancements to existing applications. However, our next webinar will be our annual holiday edition, and it will be on the first Thursday of December, where you'll learn about a brand new feature called Lenses that will help you easily create and manage portfolio plans against business goals. And you'll be able to view this webinar again and access any of our other previous last Thursday's webinars on demand from the SPM Hub at the community.servicenow.com. And I'm going to post the links to that in our chat session. But right now we'll turn to our Q&A just to see if we have any questions coming in. Let me just see here. A couple of questions. So Greg and Fred, I'm just going to put this out there and I'll let you fight over who wants to answer. So one of the questions is, one of the main complaints we get from our users about Safe or ServiceNow Safe is that the user interface is quite old-fashioned, especially in comparison to other Agile planning tools. Are there plans to give the Safe module, including the visual task board, a visual overhaul? So this is why we have our safe harbor notice, because if we talk about futures. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Deborah, we recognize that there's an opportunity to give that a refresh, and we are certainly have that on the roadmap for next year, for 2023, that as you see some of the improvements overall in the platform from a user interface perspective, those will also make it to the Safe module as well. So expect to see something in 2023 as we have additional releases. It's definitely on our roadmap.
Perfect. Thank you, Fred. Next question. Will you share the registration links in the chat? I posted the navigation links to our SPM product hub, as well as to our last Thursday's blog. If you click on the bit.ly link, it will bring you to the blog, and then click on whichever webinar you want to see, and you'll find the registration link in there. We update that on a periodic basis. So if it's not there, just check back periodically, and you'll find the registration link there. Next question. The functionality that was shown for Alignment Planner Workspace, what release is that? Is it Tokyo? And
yeah, I'll take that one. So this was definitely Tokyo, but we've had Alignment Planner Workspace capability out for quite some time, and especially out of the box templates that you can use from Alignment Planner Workspace for SAFE specifically. So that's definitely available in San Diego. So definitely take a look and see what family instance or release that you're on to make sure that you have the appropriate Alignment Planner Workspace version.
And join us, just to add on to that, join us on our December 1st webinar, because you're going to see some additional capabilities with Alignment Planner Workspace, specifically on that webinar, including what we're calling lenses, or the ability to quickly and easily build new portfolio plans. And the next question, how does the concept of product fit with this framework?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Deborah.
Thanks, Fred.
So yeah, and again, in 2023, we're looking at several improvements in our SAFE and Agile constructs. One of them is with product, and also with value stream. So you'll see initially with lenses that we're introducing, that we will also later have a more of a product lens as well. So we are working on where does product fit into this from a SAFE perspective. Some of you may be using what SAFE calls a large solution layer, which is for many organizations akin to a product or a complex product or a family of products, a product suite, numerous names for that. That is where it fits in the framework. And we are on our roadmap also looking to support that capability in SAFE. So you'll see us introduce a product value stream and the ability to work with those through lenses in 2023.
Thank you, Fred. And to add on to that as well, I would encourage you to join us on our SPM Summit on Tuesday, if you can. Karina Hatfield will also talk about how product fits within this framework, as well as our customer panel. We have some back and forth questions, and you'll hear them discuss how they're approaching it, what they're taking. So encourage you to do that. The link is in the chat for that. Another question, are you able to show dependencies between different SAFE boards? Wondering about interdepartment dependencies.
Yeah, so a great question, by the way. This really gets into how do we scale the boards. And again, this is what you'll see in 2023. So we have a fair amount on the 2023 roadmap around this in terms of being able to scale. With that additional layer, supporting the solution layer, the large solution layer in SAFE, this is where you will see us provide that capability to link dependencies across arts, and be able to visualize those and then associate those with a portfolio epic as well. So again, you'll see us bring this, the scalability, further scalability within our support for SAFE in 2023.
Thanks again, Fred. So I'm seeing, unless anybody can type really fast, that seems to be all the questions we have. And we're coming right up on the half hour anyway. So in the meantime, I'd like to say thank you again, Fred and Greg. That was wonderful. And most of all, thank you to our last Thursday's audience for joining us. We hope to see you at the SPM Summit on Tuesday, November 1st. And for the next last Thursday's webinar, which is actually the first Thursday of December 1st. Thanks, everyone.